Hello everyone. In this video, I'm going to show you how to go trick or treating, but you will not be giving out treats. Instead, you'll be giving out tricks with the move Knight takes on e5, the Halloween Gambit. Now, I'll just say right off the bat that objectively, this is a bad opening. If your opponent does know all the theory, which they won't, but if they do, then you will end up with a worse position. But practically, this is a very strong opening, and you will still end up with very fun and interesting attacking games. So first, how do we actually get to the Halloween Gambit in the first place? So, it comes out of the 4 Knights opening, and there are a few ways to get there, but the most popular one is pawn to e4, black goes pawn to e5, knight to f3, knight to c6, and now knight to c3 here, the free Knights opening, and most people go knight to f6 here, which is the 4 Knights game. The only other reasonable option here is bishop to c5, and a nice little bonus I'll show you. If they play this, and now you have a nice knight takes on e5. The idea is that after they capture back, now pawn to d4, we get a center fork, we're going to win the piece back, and we just have a strong position. So that's a nice little bonus to keep in mind, but most people go knight to f6, the 4 Knights game, and now we unleash knight takes on e5. At first glance, this move might look completely ridiculous, sacrificing an entire knight on move 4 for only a pawn, but you will soon see that this is a very strong choice, and black has to be very careful not to get blown off the board right away. Black's only reasonable choice here is to capture the knight back, except in the Gambit, and now we play pawn to d4. We harass this knight here, and then we're going to harass the other knight, and we're going to end up with a massive center. We're attacking this knight here, and black only has 2 reasonable options, which are to move the knight back either to c6 or to g6, and g6 is the much better option, and the reason for that, if they go back to c6 here, then we're actually just going to get a much better version than if they go knight back to g6, because now we push up pawn to d5 here, we attack the knight again, so now it has to go back to e5, and now we play pawn to f4. We attack the knight once again with the other pawn this time, and now it is forced to go to g6, there's no more knight to c6, and we actually get the exact same position we would have, but we have this pawn, and this pawn advance, which is just a good thing, we have more center space. So, now I'll look at the main move here, which is knight back to g6 immediately, which is the better option. And in this position and the other one as well, we now push our pawn up to e5. We attack this knight, we harass it again, and actually it's a very annoying time on deciding where to go, because it can't go here or here, because our knight defends the squares, but it also can't go here or here, because our queen. So that means it is actually forced back to the extremely ugly knight back to g8. Undeveloping their knight, and you can see here we're really starting to get a lot of compensation. So the main line here is bishop to c4, but I'm going to recommend to you a sideline that only occurs in 4% of games here, but scores much better than the main line bishop to c4, and that is the move queen to f3. And at first, this move might look odd, because you might know the opening rule that you shouldn't move your queen before moving your other pieces out, but this is an exception to the rule, because we already know that our queen wants to go to f3. This is the golden square for the queen to target the f7 pawn, as well as target the b7 pawn all the way over here, so why not do it immediately? And this move scores incredibly well. We win 57% of games here, compared to black's measly 40%, which is a 17% winning difference, was just massive. So here they have 2 main moves here. The more popular one is pawn to d6, which I'll look at right now, but this is actually a mistake. The main line here is pawn to d5, which I'll get more into a little later, but first look at pawn to d6 and why this is actually a pretty major mistake. And with this move, it looks very reasonable. They're targeting our strong pawn in the center, but now we play bishop to c4. Our queen is already on f3 here, so we are threatening a checkmate, and they have to defend it because, checkmate. They cannot go knight to h6 and defend it like this, because then we can simply snap that knight up. They capture, Now queen takes on f7, nice checkmate, so they cannot go knight to h6. Instead, most people here go bishop to e6 here, or queen to e7, which I will also look at in just a moment. But I'll look at bishop to e6 first, defending the pawn like this, blocking out our bishop from seeing it. But now we have the very tricky queen takes on b7. That is the advantage of putting our queen on f3 to target this pawn, and now we are already like not even that much worse here. And the reason this move is so good is that now we have access to the c6 square to check their king with our queen, and they have to be very careful here. The most popular move is to capture our bishop on c4 because it might look like we've just hung our bishop, but now this is actually very bad for black because we go queen to c6 check. We check their king, and then we have two moves here. One of them is queen to d7, but this just loses because we capture their rook on a8, and now it's up more material. They have a horrible position, and yeah. So their only move here to even attempt to survive is king up to e7, which is just absolutely disgusting, a horrible move there. And now we simply capture the bishop, and we are only down one pawn here, but their king is in absolute ruins on e7. That's not where the king belongs at all. We're going to develop, we're going to attack the king aggressively, and one thing to remember in this position and all Halloween Gambit positions is that you do not want to be greedy. We sacrifice a knight to try and go on a big attack, so there's no point to try and save one or two minuscule pawns. If they capture on e5 here, then the move to remember is to not capture back or something like that, but just simply castle. Let them take another pawn because then our rook is going to get into the game, and according to the computer, black is almost completely lost in this position. So I think it's pretty clear that bishop to e6 is not a very good response to them, but now let's look at their other main response here, which is queen to e7. Or queen to d7, defending the f7 pawn here with their queen, but this just isn't that great because even though our pawn is being attacked, remember you don't want to be greedy and try and defend it. Instead, you just want to castle. Let them take it, let our rook try and get into the game on either of these open files. We're going to have a ton of fun in a great attacking position. They're going to capture our pawn. They already took a knight earlier, so I'm sure they're getting all in their head. They want to capture more material. And here you play knight to d5. You attack their queen right here. Their only reasonable move is to move it over to d7 to keep this pawn defended, and now you actually want to capture back. And you might be thinking, didn't you just go on that long thing about not being materialistic? But here it is a good move because now we open up the d file for our rook to target the queen, and if they capture back, then now we move our rook to the e file. We target the knight here like this, and they're actually going to end up losing it, or we're going to get a ton of compensation in return. And according to the computer, once again, we have completely equalized here and we are much better, despite the fact that we are down an entire piece. Alright, so I think I have proven to you that pawn to d6 is just not good for black here. I'll look at one little more sideline, and then I will show you the main line for black. And that is back here, instead of playing pawn to d6, instead of playing the move bishop to b4. Pinning our knight to our king and developing the bishop to its only reasonable square, and if they play this, then now you go bishop to c4. You threaten checkmate on f7. Once again, they can't go knight to h6 because we just capture it, so they're going to have to go something like queen to e7 here, defend the pawn, and now I'm going to recommend to simply castle. Finish your development, get your pieces out, and black almost has no development here. They have a sad knight on g6 and a sad queen on e7 and its bishop here, which is simply going to be traded on the next move because knight to d5 is too powerful, so they have to trade. We have to take back, and once again, the engine says that we are stupid here, that black is just better. However, this is not an easy position for black to play. They have very limited development. It's very hard for them to develop any pieces. We have a super strong grip in the center here. We have a very strong idea to go pawn to a4 and then bishop to a3 to attack the queen like this and prevent any castling. And once again, we have a very strong practical position. So now let's look at the mainline position here and where the Halloween Gambit is quote-unquote refuted, and that is the move pawn to d5 here. This move probably looks odd to you at first, and it should, because black is giving back the pawn. And the reason that they are doing that is that if we capture, then they're going to force a queen trade, and we sacrifice the piece. We don't want to go into an endgame. But because this pawn on d5 is so powerful, it is preventing our bishop from coming to the golden c4 square, we have to capture it with our queen. We can't capture it with our knight, because then pawn c6, and we just get absolutely murdered here. Our pawn will be taken on the next move. So we have to play queen takes on d5 here. Black will certainly trade queens. They're happy to go in this endgame. We capture back, and we're threatening a fork on c7, and black has to make a kind of annoying move here, which is king to d8, a defenseless pawn with their king, which is kind of ugly. However, here, this is where the Halloween Gambit is sort of refuted. I wouldn't call it completely refuted, but black definitely does have the better position here, because even though they are lacking in development, they have an awkward king on d8, they have a piece for 2 pawns, and we simply do not have enough compensation here. And in this position, you have a few ideas on what you can do. You can play pawn h4, try and go pawn h5, or pawn c3, or bishop d2. I'm going to recommend bishop to d3 here, but you have a lot of options. And now the game usually goes something like pawn to c6, attacking our knight. We're going to back it up to e3, try and control some important squares here, and after something like knight to e7, and now pawn to c3, once again the engine is calling me stupid here, saying this opening is absolutely horrible and black is just winning. However, once again, practically, this is not a super easy position for black to play. They're lacking in development, their bishop is blocked out, their king is very awkward on d8, and we have a very solid connect 4 in the center here. Alright, so that is how to go trick or treating with the dubious but very fun Halloween Gambit. Thank you so much for watching. Like, subscribe, do all that stuff, and I will see you next time. Have a fantastic day. And I know I'm like a week late on Halloween, just shush.